There is no Christian theology of sex. There are multiple ones, and they contradict each other from century to century. The model of being a Christian totally changed for Protestants in the 16th century.
Women's history is lost because it's written by misogynistic men.
Yeah.
Is there a truth to that?
There is quite a lot of truth in it, actually.
Diarmuid, welcome to the British History channel and podcast. Thank you so much for joining me here at Harvington, ready for your talk at the Harvington History Festival. Behind you I've got your latest book, Lower Than the Angels, which I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and gripped by.
Good.
And one of the things that's striking me, actually right from the beginning, is whether you consider yourself a Christian or not, but you're involved, living, being brought up in Western society. This is a book that I think this is one of the books when people say, what book would you say has to be on someone's bookshelf that they must read? This is one of them for that reason.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because that was my hope, really. And it's a book in which I'm really invested, because I hope that it will produce more sanity on a subject which is making people insane in the 21st century. And I'm doing it from a position of being within the Christian world. You know, I function within my local parish church, basically as organist, but also because that's important to me. So I'm not an outsider looking in. And frankly, I'm a committed writer in the sense I have a point of view, and I don't think there's anything wrong for historians to be committed to a particular point of view, because it's foolish to think that historians can be detached from their subject. We're not. But what we do have to commit to is truth. And I'm hoping that the book will present a different view on truth to what's gone before.
Because one of the, obviously, things that's just going through is interpretation, reinterpretation of the scriptures, explanations, I'd say, come in. Oh, it's like that bit's missing because it's okay, that they intended us to fill that bit in on of our own sort of understanding. And I mean, was there any point at which that Christianity was settled on how things should be done?
No, that's really the point of the book, that there is no Christian theology of sex. There are multiple ones, and they contradict each other from century to century. I mean, if you look at the first Christians, if you look at the Bible, the New Testament, you see a religion of families, households, rather different from what we'd understand by family or households, but they were families, and often with a woman in charge, because a widow might be the head of the household. But very quickly that changed. So by the 2nd century, the 3rd century, the emphasis has shifted from families and marriage to celibacy, virginity, and the development of monasteries, which are simply not there in the Bible. If you think how important monasticism is to modern Christianity and over the centuries, it's not there in the New Testament. And you think, gosh, that's a bit odd, isn't it? You have to explain why, where it came from. So that's one of the sections of the book, is looking at this extraordinary development within the faith. And it meant, and this is, I think, something which surprises people when they read the book, that actually marriage for most of Christian history has been a second best. It's been a second best to virginity and celibacy, and you'll get to heaven quicker if you are a virgin. And that really dominated the church for more than 1,000 years. And in the West, it's in the 16th century, which is sort of the period I started from, the Reformation, when that was completely reversed. We all know about the dissolution of the monasteries, and they were dissolved because Protestants in the Reformation thought they were a cheat, that they were misleading people, that they were giving people the idea that virgins, celibates, had a better chance of getting to heaven. And you look at Martin Luther's Reformation, you look at all the Protestant reformers, and they were saying, no, that's wrong. Ordinary people are just as much part of God's plan. Families are part of God's plan. And so they made the clergy able to marry again. So much so that Protestants really very much disapproved of celibacy. So that's what I mean by a complete turnaround, a revolution in what Christians think about sex.
Because that might be a surprise to people, that marriage, so the celibacy element wasn't there from the beginning, and clergy were married and had families.
Yeah.
And is it the Gregorian Revolution where this is...
In the 12th century, yes, the Pope Gregory VII's revolution, which you call it the Gregorian Revolution, yeah. And at that point, the church in the West, call it the Catholic Church if you will, did something which no other church in history has done, which is make all the clergy celibate. This is a revolution. So often it's called the Gregorian Revolution. And that's what the Reformation reversed. It put the clock back, if you like, to the fact that clergy could get married, have families, and actually become the sort of model in a new way of what a Christian was. The clergy family, with pastor, his wife, children. I speak with feeling on this because I come from one of those families. My dad was a country parson, and his father before him was a priest of the Anglican Communion. So it is very sort of, you might say, existential for me. But it's more than that. I just think it's true. But what that means is that the model of being a Christian totally changed for Protestants in the 16th century. And you just need to put that on the chessboard, if you like, of all the things that Christians have done about what they believe about marriage. And there's a thing about marriage which I think is also a very important story in the book, which I think may also surprise people. At the present day, Christians are arguing intensely, incessantly about whether people of the same sex can get married in church, or even get married, but married in church. And the church from which I come, the Church of England, is really split down the middle about this. But what I never heard in all the discussions I've heard over the last 20 years is a basic fact, a glaring silence. The fact is that in the early church, no one went to church to get married. No one. There was no such thing as a church wedding. Now, if you just chuck that fact into the discussion, it's like a hand grenade. You've got to start arguing again. So I trace that quite carefully in the book, and I think this will be one of the biggest surprises to people in the book.
It is a fascinating chapter. It causes consternation, kind of working out, do they get married just outside the church? Are they allowed in the church? and it evolves.
They didn't think of going to church if they were Christians. It's a civil ceremony. And it's only really much, much later that clergy started saying, you must come to church to get married. It's in the 7th century, in the very much the eastern part of the church. And it's only in the Western church, the Catholic church, it's the 12th century. So for less than half the church's existence, people have come to church to get married, but only less than half.
Yeah, it's a fascinating fact. And is that around controlling, do you think, the marriage?
Yes, it is, and it's all associated very directly with the clergy becoming celibate. So the laity must now be married and have procreate and have children, because the clergy can't. They're two different sorts of human beings, really.
I wanted to ask you about that, because that seems such a contradiction. You know, we're going to elevate celibacy and virginity, and yet in order to have Christians, we need a lot of them to procreate.
Yeah, and what the church was doing then was to say, well, yeah, marriage is sacred, and procreating is a sacred thing, and so it must be within the church's ceremonies, and we're going to call marriage a sacrament, which it hadn't really been before, not in a formal sense. So the medieval church of the West created 7 sacraments, and one of them is marriage. But it's a really quite odd sacrament, because all the others are done by priests, whereas marriage isn't. It's done by the couple, and the church didn't succeed in challenging that. And so to begin with, marriage is a bit odd, and the church was still a bit iffy about it. And a mark of that was that medieval weddings, to start with, were outside the church, and that's why the church porch was invented. So there's a sort of roof over the couple when they come in. But I don't think that thought lasted very long, because course, where do you put mother-in-law? Where do you put the wedding party? And I think churches gradually were open to weddings. So by the time the Reformation had come along, the wedding is really in church. And that's another change. But it's a change fueled by people and their needs within the Christian life, but just their ordinary life.
So I also wondered whether the celibacy element, so when the clergy, and you've also got your, obviously, the monasteries and which are the places for learning as well, and this comes up quite a lot. Women's history is lost because it's written by misogynistic men.
Yeah.
Is there a truth to that?
There is quite a lot of truth in it, actually. There is misogyny in the Christian tradition, often by men who not so much hate women, but are scared by them because of their emotions. Well, many of them are completely thrown by the presence of women. One thing you can say about the monastery, or at least the nunnery, is that it was a refuge from men. And we may think at the present day that sex is wonderful and everyone enjoys it. Well, actually, for women in the past, that wasn't often the case. If they are trapped in a marriage, their function is to have loads of children. It's dangerous. They may die. Their children may well die. So that makes sex a really quite dangerous thing. And around that, to become a nun is to escape from that world and to be honoured for escaping from it. So you can see why that should appeal to many women. And for men, well, there's the prestige, I think, of being a celibate. And I think many of them were. But for many, there is a real emotional tussle about being in a community of people of the same sex, some of whom will clearly be attracted to each other. And the medieval church was extremely worried about that, put a lot of discussion into it, and also made same-sex relationships the fearsome other that you've got to avoid. God hates it, and you must do terrible things to those who indulge in it, like burning them at the stake.
And yet the Bible doesn't talk about homosexuality?
Well, Jesus doesn't talk about homosexuality. Paul of Tarsus made some what you might call irritable passing remarks about it. But Jesus didn't say a thing. And that's always worried those who hate same-sex relationships. Why didn't Jesus say anything about it? And another story which I love in the book, what I love and hate it, is the great sodomite massacre of Christmas Eve. This is a legend invented in the Western Church in the 12th century. And the legend is that little baby Jesus, before he came into the world, said to God the Father, I'm not going. I don't like all those sodomites in the world. It's unnatural. I'm not going to a world with sodomites. So God the Father said, okay, I'll kill them all. And he killed them all in one go, all the sodomites in the world. And this happened, of course, on Christmas Eve, therefore, because Jesus said, fine, they're all dead now. I can enter the world. So little baby Jesus goes down into the manger. Isn't this a horrible story?
Yeah.
But
what a precocious baby.
Exactly. Well, it was the Son of God. But the point is that this is a way to account for Jesus saying nothing about sodomites.
Oh, that they just didn't exist.
They didn't
Jesus
exist. And this is precisely what one friar, the cat he let out of the bag, a Franciscan friar of the 15th century, said, that's why Jesus didn't say anything about sodomy.
Aha, we've solved it.
Yeah, we've solved it.
Wow. Well, I must let you go because you're on stage shortly. But other than me highly recommending your book and your other books, where can people find you, find your work?
In any good bookshop. In Harvington Hall, of course, today, and I'll be signing books there. And so I'm always happy to sign one of my books if someone buys it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.